My name is Scott O'Brien. I'm from London. I was originally born in Essex, but I've lived in London since the age of 5. I grew up in Romford, in East London. I went to a Catholic school in East London. It's quite a rough school. It was in Becontree Heath. It's no longer there. Yeah, it was. My parents split up when I was young. When I was around about 7 years old. I was brought up mainly by my mother, and we lived in a council estate in Romford. It was quite a tough area. We weren't very rich. It was quite poor, but it was a loving family. My mum was extremely loving. She brought me up in a loving atmosphere. I went to a school which is, even though it was in quite a poor area and a rough area, and had low academic achievements coming from the school, they tried to instill good values into the pupils, and I think I was receptive to that. As I was growing up, I was brought up a Catholic, but my parents I think they were nominal Catholics. They were Catholic in name, they would go to church only for weddings or for baptisms or funerals. But I went to this a Catholic school, and they encouraged me to go to church. And that's when I around about the age of 13, 14, I started finding out about God and who God was. And I think the church instilled in me a good sense of who God was. And they gave me a good sense of spirituality, which I've carried on for the rest of my life. Leaving school, I didn't know what to do when I was about 16, 17. I went on, when I was attached to the church, I went to a place in south of France called Lourdes, which is a pilgrimage site. And over there I worked in the hospitals, and I was helping the elderly. We took elderly from our diocese, our church, to the pilgrimage, and I met a nurse when I was over there, and we started talking, and I was really interested in his job, and it was a job about caring for people, for nurturing people, for talking to people, and I felt an affinity towards that. So I had this feeling had this sense of values instilled in me from the school and from the church. Had a strong belief in God, and I wanted to help people. So at the age of 16, I made a choice to become a nurse. I took my A-levels and I entered nursing when I was about 19. And I trained as a children's nurse. I think it was a tough area. It was, you had to be mentally and physically strong. I think I went to an all-boys Catholic school in London. As an all-boys school, people, other schools wanted to wanted to fight us, and the school had a reputation to maintain. The boys in the school had a reputation to maintain, and so we had I'll give you an example. We had a gang in our school, and our school was Bishop Ward, so we had a gang called the Bishop Ward Destruction Firm, so the BWDF. And in my first year, my very first week, I was in school. A group of this gang took the RE teacher, the religious education teacher, into the maths classroom, and they all tied their ties into a noose and tried hanging him from the ceiling from it. But unfortunately, it was one of those suspended ceilings, so the ceiling collapsed before anything disastrous happened to him. So that was an idea of what my school was like. It was, we had an organised gang, and we had it was tough when you went to school. We were banned from all sporting events for 5 years, so we weren't allowed to play other schools at sporting events because there was a football match and someone took a gun to the football match and shot it in the air. I think it was at a probably an air pistol or whatever, but the police were involved, and no one wanted to play our school any sports anymore, so we were banned from that. And with that, you had if I took the wrong, I took the wrong. Had detention one day, so I was late coming out of school, and because I had my school uniform on, people knew what school I went to. I had a few times of people trying to fight me on the back of the bus. So what we used to do, we used to have our badge, our school blazer. So we used to just put on 3 little knots onto it. So on the way home, you'd be able to just pull it off, pull it in your pocket, take your tie off, and then you're just a generic schoolboy, and no one knew that you came from Bishop Ward. But if you kept it on, people would see that as a target, and because you were a rough school, and people thought you were rough, and they wanted to fight you to prove a point. But to say that, it's a bit distorted, because the school was good and there were good teachers there. And they were, we had a very good headmaster who did try to instill good sense of values in the boys who went there, and they were good. All the boys in my school were very good. It was just they grew up in poverty and they knew nothing else. There was no, if you grew up in poverty in East London, there's not many ways out for you. If you go to, these children will never go to Oxford and never go to Cambridge. These kids will end up, scraping through, getting their maybe 1 or 2 GCSEs, and, having no qualification, will end up getting money how they get money. So I think it's a fault of the system rather than the fault of the school. I think it was just a rough area because there wasn't that much money and it wasn't an affluent area. My mum's a saint. My mum's fantastic. She's got a heart as big as anyone I know, and she's always a giving person. But she had to work. She had 3 jobs when we was growing up. She would leave early in the morning, do a cleaning job, and then she would go to her normal job. And after that, she would do a cleaning job in the evening. She worked incredibly hard for us, and yes, my brother and I would come home from school and we'd make our own dinner because my mum wasn't there. But everything what my mum had, she gave to my brother and I. And again, we learned so much. I still do learn so much from my mum. The way she's just incredibly giving. This self-sacrifice for her family. She makes sure that love is not just a word, but love is actions. My mum worked incredibly hard, and I'm always appreciative of that. The church gave me a sense of spirituality. The Catholic Church is a very spiritual place, and they teach you this. I felt I was taught more about who God was, what God was, this God of love, this God of compassion, through the church. I think it's easy to criticize what the church is because it's a big organisation, and it has a hierarchy and it has a structure, and there's abuses within those hierarchies and structure. But if you take, that's the human side of the church, where when you put people involved, people are corrupt by nature. But the church itself, the spirituality is pure. And so it taught me who God was, this God of compassion. And I think I needed that when I was growing up. I needed that sense of, there's someone out there looking after me. I needed to feel comfortable. I used to remember saying my prayers every single night and having that communion with God and talking to him. And all my probably my angst as I was growing up, I could talk to him about it, and I would get answers from him. He would talk to me back, and I felt that warmth and I felt that love from him. So I didn't feel a part. I didn't feel part of the crowd when I was growing up. I didn't feel this was right for me. I never knew. I always felt I didn't want to grow up having a couple of GCSEs and turning into a life of crime or into, just scraping by in life. I wanted to help people. So I purposely kept myself apart from probably the rougher elements around, and had a small group of close friends. And I used to go to church, and I used to be involved with the church. I used to be involved with the, taking people to pilgrimages. I used to be an altar boy when I was growing up. So I deliberately chose a different path, and I think the church was there. It was a great atmosphere to actually say there is a second choice in life. You don't have to follow the crowd. You can be good, and you can follow your natural good instincts in life. And I think the church gave me that, and it gave me that spirituality from that, which I'm, internally grateful for it. My father is a socialist, is an ardent socialist, and he instilled in me the point that where the church gave me a community to help the community, my father as a socialist would say that, we as a state should be helping all the poorest in the land. And he was an ardent believer in the NHS, free healthcare for all, and then ardent believer in education, free education for all, because this is how you improve society. So going from that, I had these principles in me to go, to go help people, to go wanting to improve society, not to be just part of society, but to actually improve society, improve the living conditions and the health of all the people around me. It probably sounds more saintly than what it is. I mean, I was a 16-year-old boy, and I still did 16-year-old boy things. I did. I think that's the contradiction in my life. When at that age, I still went out, and at that age, I was drinking with my friends, or I was, doing other things as well. And I think at the age of 16 as well, I did go off to, up to the age of 16, I was genuinely, trying to do my best. I think at the age of 16, I was tempted by the world, and I went out and sampled the world until I was about 18. And then I felt that, when you go out and sample what you think are the delights of the world, it's quite a vacuous state. There's nothing there to fill you up. When I used to go to church, I used to come home feeling whole and filled, and feeling really good about myself. And when I went to my 16 years, my 16th birthday, and I used to be going out to my friends, going to nightclubs and other places. I was filling my life with meaningless, what I thought were, filling up with, drink and other things, because I thought these are what I was meant to be doing at the age of 16. And the delights were only short term, but the long term effects was that I was losing stuff within me. I was becoming more empty in myself. And I felt that, and I think I was about 18, I felt this emptiness inside of me, where as I was before when I was 16, 15, I felt quite full when I went to church, and I felt quite sated, for want of a better word. I was filled up with love. I felt genuinely happy with myself. When I was 18, I wasn't that happy, because I was substituting those for short-term enjoyment. So that's when I made another conscious decision to say, no, I need to pick another path. I need to go and do things that I feel that will help me spiritually. So this is when nursing came into my life, and nursing is a fantastic job. It's probably, to me, it's the best job in the world. I would never want to be in anything else but a nurse, because it's when you meet people at their most needy, and you're there to help them, and you're there to lend them a hand. You're there to, curing people is not just about giving them medicine. It is about taking that whole person and leading through a journey to, hopefully health. And talking to people, and I really enjoyed that. So I think nursing was a great career for me to start actually giving me some meaning back in my life. I mean, my dad's very good. My dad's got very strong principles. and he's got very strong socialist principles. I mean, which he, again, which I said earlier, he instilled in me, about giving back to the community. And my dad has his faults, like we all do. My dad was brought up in a very poor community, and he didn't grow up any qualifications. He's a very clever man, but no academic qualifications. And my dad would probably do things that were on the other side of the law. And he taught me not to do that. So I learned from example from my father. I had very strong principles, but he would, again, his way of working, his way of getting money was something that I, didn't want anything to be a part of. I didn't want to. I wanted to earn my money through life. I wanted to be physical graft, and to earn my money and to pay my taxes. And so it was very good. My dad's a positive role model for what values he gave me, but he's also a very positive role model for not to be what he does. I think from the age of 16, my time out, when I was, when I started drinking, as probably a normal Western 16-year-old white boy from London would do, go out drinking, go out partying, and But as I said, I started to find myself empty. So I started when I went to college. I went to university, and did my nursing, and. But I never went back to church. I would sporadically go back to church. But I was still a very spiritual person, and I still would speak to God from it. But growing up, when you're a student nurse, it was, I just had, I was 18, I was really young, I had so much fun in university, I think I was the only boy in a class of 46 girls, and it was there was a lot of socialising, and the studying was hard. So I was on my own, still spiritual, but I had no one to guide me during that spirituality, and I still had this presence of God, and I still talked to God. But I had a distance between my spirituality and my actions. So, and again, it's just one of those contradictions in life. And I was genuinely trying to be a good person, but I had no, when I was 18, I was on my own as in university. I had no one really to guide me through it. And I was doing what I felt was good for me, what I felt was, what I was chasing enjoyments as well as still trying to keep the spiritual side. So I wasn't a bad person. I think I was just a little bit lost when I was during university. But again, I always had that sense of I wanted to help people. I always had that sense of there was more to me than going out on that. Nursing was never about earning money. Nursing was about genuinely caring for people and fulfilling a need within myself. And I think God was directing me in that way. And but I just started drifting away from everything. And I think when you're 18, you think you're a man, and you don't think you need anyone. And I think I was going through that phase. But university was great because I met loads of people, met different kinds of people, and I was always learning from all the people around me. I got married at the age of, I was quite young when I got married. I met someone when I was nursing, and we ended up having a child, or two children together, and we ended up, I think we married about 10 years later from that. But we lived together as man and wife. We had two children, and it was when I had children, I started saying, well, I wanted them to bring them up with a sense of spiritualism. I wanted them to grow up with a sense of God, where my parents didn't really talk about God, at home. I wanted to talk about God to my children. So I started going back to church on a regular basis. And this happened for about 2 to 3 years in my mid-20s. And I rediscovered that spirituality side of me. And as a parent, I wanted to convey all the right attributes to my children. So and my then partner would come to church with me, and so I started going back to church from that. But it wasn't sustained. I think after 2 to 3 years, you miss one mass. I think the difference between the thing I love about Islam, it has this structure every single day. You have to pray 5 times a day. And it makes you think about God during those times. And Islam gives you that structure and a religion with that. And I think I was desperately missing that. So from a Christian point of view, there's less structure. So I sort of drifted off from the path again from that. I moved house, I moved community, and I never really went to the church in the new community. So I sort of then drifted away again, but always trying to keep this sense of spirituality in myself. I think it's you have a Western press that look at, there's 2 parts. One is the Western press looking at Islam, and then the second part is the way Muslims hold themselves in society. And I think one is the Western press had a rather negative view on Islam. When I was, I used to be a vegetarian, and the thought of halal, slaughtering a cow, not stunning it beforehand. And I never knew all the Islamic, the proper Islamic practices then. So I thought halal was a torturous thing for animals. Why would you want to slit an animal's throat and let it suffer and let it die? To suffer the way it dies. If you're going to kill an animal, stun it first. Pull it out of its misery, and then if you want to cut its throat, do it afterwards. I genuinely thought that, and I get forgiven for this, but I genuinely thought that Prophet Muhammad was someone who just went around. He was a trader, and he went around picking up all these stories, and the Quran was just a mix mash of Judaism and Christianity, and the stories that are in the Quran are just rehashed stories from. So I didn't think, what's new about Islam? And then also you had, countries like, certain countries, Islamic countries, who would persecute Christians in their countries. Had these blasphemy laws that at a drop of a hat, if they said anything about the Prophet, they would burn and kill these Christian communities. Or you would hear stories about the amount of Christians that have been persecuted in the Middle East, and these are Muslim countries. Or if it's that kind of religion, why are they persecuting Christians for? It felt barbaric. It felt old. You had this. The Western press would give you this very extreme form of Sharia law, which certain countries perpetuate, that women can't drive, that have to stand 10 feet behind, 5 feet behind their husbands. You think, God, this is archaic, this is old, this is a cruel religion. What sort of, this is, it didn't mean anything to me. And I don't think if you asked me 20 years ago, I'd end up being a Muslim, I would have been shocked. I would have said, no, I would have never, ever renounced my Christianity, ever. Right? And Islam was this, it was quite I thought it was a negative religion, as in it was not spread by love, but it was spread by the sword. So what sort of religion is that? So that was my first interaction with Islam. I worked extremely hard in my job. I I said I love nursing. I felt my career was in nursing. I worked in children intensive care, so it's where children on life support machines. So it's a very hard, emotionally taxing job, because unfortunately you see multiple children that die. The children that die in your arms that you would resusc. They would, unfortunately, some do not make it. So it's a hard job. I worked incredibly hard. I was going through different. I was trying to. I was doing I was doing lots of courses, my intensive care courses. I was trying to bring up my children. I was trying to pay my bills. So life was incredibly busy. It was incredible. Having two children, trying to pay the bills, trying to juggle a career as well. And I always felt it was very important that I spend as much time as I can with my children. So I wasn't never trying to be an absent father. On my days off, I'd fill my time with my children. I'd sit down, do homework with them, and read with them. So it was incredibly busy, and that's one of the many reasons why my first marriage broke up, because I think life was, it was hard. I had split up with my ex-wife, and I was living alone from that, and I had this choice in my head, and I've always had a real sense of God, always had a God, and I've always prayed informally. I've always talking to God of all my problems in my life, but every single time I'd always let Him down, because He'd always tell me what path to choose, and I sometimes choose His path, which is the harder path, but more or less I choose the easier path, the path I wanted to go down on, and then every single time He would always guide me back. He was always there for me, and I think I started begrudging that. I started begrudging that someone was there for me, and I couldn't understand that. I keep on making these mistakes. I just spoke up with my wife. I wasn't. It was quite. I was in a lot of turmoil, emotional turmoil at this time, and I couldn't understand why God would always be with me. Why would God always? I've made plenty of mistakes in my life. How can He be so forgiving? And I used to begrudge Him that. I used to go, why? I used to, at that point, I used to shout at Him, going, why did you do this to me? Why don't you just let me alone? Why don't you just let me be? Why don't you just let me not have a faith? Having this voice in my head all the time telling me what to, to be good all the time, to be there all the time for me. And I found it really, really hard, because the conflict was that He was telling me, He was so loving, and I felt I was being such a disrespectful son, trying to, not wanting to be a part of Him, and I felt, quite guilty about that. And I think during that time there was a film out called The Passion of the Christ, and it really affected me, and not in a way that I thought it would, because I felt incredibly guilty that this man died for me, as my Christian faith was saying, that Jesus died for me, and I didn't want anyone to die for me. I don't think I was ever good enough for anyone to be hung on a cross and be killed. And I didn't want that. And I felt, it made me feel extremely guilty about myself. So spirituality-wise, I was going through, as in probably reflective in my life, quite a lot of turmoil. And I didn't really understand who God was. I sort of lost Him. But He was always there. He was always talking to me. And it was like my relationship with God, every person's relationship to God is very different. I have a very, my communication with God. I can feel him even when I'm breathing. I feel him in the air around me. I have a sense of him around me all the time, and I struggled with that. I struggled being so close to him, and I wanted out. I wanted just to be left alone. I wanted to be just leave me alone, and I can just be. I was looking at other people around me and said, why don't they have this person telling them what to do all the time? Not in a very nice way. And so I made a decision to say, I don't want to believe anymore. And it's stupid. It's like, how can you tell someone that you don't believe in them whilst you're talking to them? It's a contradiction. But I think I was just saying, I can't handle this anymore. I don't think I'm a good person. I failed in my marriage, which I was desperately upset about, because who wants to get divorced? You don't ever get married to get divorced. I was living away from my children, even though I had very good and close contact with my children. I felt I was, I think I didn't deserve God speaking to me. I didn't think I deserved him being, directing me. I think there's plenty of other people in the world he could have helped, better people than me. So I was spiritually in this turmoil, and then I began to work. I was working in a private hospital, and I was a manager there. And I was introduced to this a Muslim pharmacist, and just meeting her just turned my life around. It was just amazing, and here was this Muslim pharmacist, and she was probably the most. She was, when I was just to be a Christian, we used to term being called a witness. You're a witness to God, not because of what you said, it's because of your actions. Okay, your actions, tell you that you believe in God. Many people can talk about belief in God, but it takes a good person to have all their actions emanating from God and doing everything for God. And this person was just immensely spiritual, or is immensely spiritual. Everything that she did was from God. She had a complete love of God. And you could see it in this person. This person had an aura about her of absolute serenity, that she was at one with herself, at one with God. And I said, I want that. I want what that person's got. And I don't know how to get it. So I would strike up a conversation with her. And because she was a Muslim and I had all these pre-held beliefs, as we talked about earlier, I thought there must be something in this religion. There must be something in this religion, because this person is so good. So I used to talk to her about it, and I used to argue with her all the time about Islam, because I wasn't accepting of it at first, and my conversion is a very slow conversion, and she would just very patiently talk me through what Islam was. And I'll go, why do you wear hijab for? Isn't it demeaning on women? Why do you wear this hijab? If you're hiding yourself from men, well, you're not letting men, which I thought was not letting men sin by looking at you in a sexual way. Why isn't that the fault of men? Why can't men control their lusts? Why do women have to cover their hair up for men to control their lusts? And I'd ask questions like this, and she would come back to me in a very eloquent answer. That's not the story. The story is about being being discreet about yourself, and not for men seeing you as a person, not as an object. And the way she would talk, that did make sense. And then I would go on to the next subject and go, didn't the Prophet Muhammad just make up all these stories? And she'd go, well, let's go back and we'll read some of the Quran. And then she would talk me through the Quran. And, there is something more to this. There's something in this book. There is something about that man called Muhammad. There was something there. And then, but again, I would argue. Again, I go, okay, why do you have apostasy laws in certain Islamic countries. And the Quran says there is no compulsion of religion. How can you be Islamic? How can they follow the Quran if they're willing to kill people because they don't believe in Islam anymore? And then she would go back to me and calmly speak, and calmly talk to me, saying, "Well, what I hear in the press is not always true, and the way people interpret Islam can be different, but she can only tell me her faith in Islam." And slowly, it started making sense. Over a year, it started making sense. And the first time I asked her out for just to come to a party, but it was a party for the whole hospital, so it wasn't a date. I just wanted her to come along, and I could talk to her then. And I met her at the party, and I was, I was very drunk when I met her, right? And she just talked to me that night, and that was the last time I've ever had a drink, because the way she talked to me that night was saying, she just completely saw through me, and got to the person inside who I wanted to be. And she spoke to that person who I wanted to be, not the person who I was. And Islam gave me that, and the way she talked about Islam was giving me those directions to be that person, to be that spiritual person, to refine God, actually to start listening to God, and listen to God through not just my inner voice, but listen to God through the Quran, to say, these are the things I want you to be. This is the person I want you to be, Scott. I want you to be righteous, and I want you to be merciful. I want you to be, your belief in God has to come out through your actions. And I think the structure of Islam and this belief in the oneness of God and the prophets, gave me that. It gave me that structure. And to that point, it's very poor analogy, but I felt always had something missing inside of me. I felt like an empty, of a puzzle with one piece missing. There was always a gap inside of me, and it's like Islam come along and filled that gap for me, and I felt then completed. Christianity is incredibly good at giving spirituality. Islam gave me a very global look at God, not from a global look as in the spiritual actions and my worldly actions can be combined. So over a length of time, I started to embrace Islam. I started reading the Quran, and I started to, I've made a conscious decision not to drink. I started tentatively praying 5 times a day. Well, I started praying once a day. And the person I met, who's now my wife, would show me how to pray at first, and just very gently teaching me. And she was such a gentle teacher in Islam. It was amazing. This is someone I needed, and this person who, I needed someone who didn't just talk religion, but actually acted out religion. Acted out the principles of God, to be merciful, to tell the truth all the time, or to tell the truth all the time, and to be righteous, and to give to charity, and to be completely giving. And this person, my wife, taught me in a very gentle manner, and until one point, I was contemplating about Islam. And it struck me, actually, I've become a Muslim without knowing that I've become a Muslim. I followed, I started praying 5 times a day. I understood about eating halal meat. I was reading the Quran most days. I tried to read it most days. And actually, I am a Muslim, and I'm prepared to say that I am a Muslim. And she wasn't my wife then. I said it to her, and I said, I think I'm ready to say this, and And I declared it to her, and then from then on, I knew that I was a Muslim, and I knew that I had found a sense of community that I'd always be a part of. And I found a sense of God that I always wanted to be with him, always wanted to be with him. And I opened myself up to be guided by him, and for him to teach me, and for me to listen to his voice. And I've taken that path, and it's been the most incredible path since. Life is very hard, but that sense of God and that sense of, that oneness of God, you can't explain who God is, but the small part that I see of him, this immense, incredible, you can't put attributes to him, but he is everything, and he gives me everything, and it gave me such a sense of well-being and a sense of purpose in life, and I have to say it's just been an amazing journey since I've turned to Islam. I didn't think of it at first. I always thought I was just a Muslim first and always, and I still am. We're all Muslims, we're all brothers in one faith. We just practice faith a little bit different, and that's all. But at first, my wife never ever talked to me about Shia Islam or Sunni Islam. She just taught Islam, and that was it. It was simple. It was only when I started getting negative views on me from other Muslims. So I entered Muslim very innocently, and I hope I'm still kept a part of that innocence, because I want that innocence. I don't want to be, I'm Shia, they're Sunni, or whatever. I want to be one community. But of course there are differences in that, and it was only when I think I had my first Ramadan, and I was on my own. I was in Dubai, and I took my children away on holiday. So it's my first time. This is about 3 years ago, and I was in Dubai on my own. I was the first time without my wife praying, and I went to the prayer room, and I had my and I'll pray with my hands down. I play in a very shy way. And I came out to one prayer room, and a group of men come up to me and called me a kafir. And I was like, a bit shocked. And I didn't know what the word meant, right? But they weren't very pleasant to me. And okay, well, fine. That was maybe I'm praying wrong. Maybe I'm doing things that I'm not meant to do. Because my wife wasn't here to guide me. And I thought, okay, but I carry on praying anyway at my own. And again, people come up to me, and you can't pray like this. Why are you praying like this for? And I was like, okay, I didn't know. I was shocked. I said, am I doing something wrong? And they're saying, why are you praying with your hands down by your side? And I was going, well, this is the way I've been taught. And then they're going, point their fingers at me and wag their fingers at me, and I'd go, okay, and I'd come back. And I came back and told my wife, and I said, I don't know what I did wrong. People would tell me off as I was in their prayer rooms, or coming out, never in the prayer rooms, I was coming out to the prayer rooms. And she goes, no, they're just, you do anything right. It's just, they're small-minded. They just don't understand, the way you pray. They're brought up a different way, pray in a different way, and they think everyone believes in that way of praying. But it doesn't matter, because you're praying to God, not to other people. The way you pray, as long as you feel comfortable praying to God like that, God will accept your prayers. You're doing things right. Like, as in, and she's very generous. Like, God will accept their prayers, whether you cross your hands or not. So I thought that was okay, that's fine. And then I used to, when I came back to England, I went to the prayer rooms in my hospital. And that I had people telling me off. And I accidentally walked in front of someone who was praying, and I thought the man was going to beat me up, right? And he literally had people holding him back because I thought he was going to beat me up, shouting at me. And I go, oh, I don't think I like this. And I felt really uncomfortable in prayer rooms because I would sit there and pray by my hands, and as in people push their hand, they'd be very. They wanted to touch me when I was praying, and I think it's a very Sunni thing, and and I can understand that that's been part of a community and what have you. And at first, when people used to push against me, I thought I was in their way, so I'd move to the side, and again they would come up and just push me again, and I thought, oh, am I in the way? And I would step to the side, and I think then they gave up after a while. And then I started saying, oh, okay. And people would look at me when I was praying. And I was like, I thought, because am I a white man in this? Because everyone else is, a different colour to me. But it was because I was a Shiite, not a Sunni. And so, okay, fine. And then that's when I started noticing the Shia Islam. And then I started, there is, unfortunately, different people's perception of Islam is different from my perception of Islam. And there was a program a couple of years ago called My Brother, the Fundamentalist. And they had this, an Englishman who converted to Islam, and he converted to Wahhabi Islam. And he grew his beard and what have you, changed his name. And his brother was filming him. So his brother held out his hand to shake his hand. And the Islamic brother wouldn't refuse to touch him because he was not a Muslim. And I couldn't understand. So, well, no, that's not Islam. He's your brother. You don't not shake hands with your brother because he's not a Muslim. He's your brother. And I thought, what is this they're teaching them? What is this interpretation of Islam that I don't see? What is this? And I was really, really confused about it. And I was going, definitely this is not what Shia Islam was. And that's when I started saying, well, actually, I don't want to say that, there's perfectly as good as many Sunni Muslims as there are Shia Muslims, and just as many bad Shia Muslims there is bad, Sunni Islam. So I don't want to make a difference between the two faiths, but I always felt that Shia Islam is very pragmatic. It's all about, it's not words, because anyone can speak words, good words. Okay, but I think in Shia Islam it's about how you conduct yourself every single day. It is about, as I come back to this word, which is always two words that mean much to me in Islam, is righteous and merciful. And it is about being righteous, and it is about being merciful. And the first time I ever felt at home, truly at home in Islam, is when I went to Iraq. I went to Iraq last year, and I was there in the Hussein, and I prayed with thousands of other Shia Muslims, and I felt truly at home. And to me, it was a wonderful, very spiritual feeling. It's been perfect. It's been brilliant. It's been God still pushes me. I still sin. I don't. I still have this human side of me choosing the easy path. But this forgiveness that He always showed me before in life is there in abundance now. He gives me the Quran is there to guide me in my way. It's a perfect book, because I sometimes I have these the problems in life, and I would ask God a question, and I would open up the Quran. I would just be happy. I don't flick through it. It's just where I carried on reading, and the answer would be there. And it's like, wow. And it's eerily spooky sometimes. I think, wow, the answer's there in the Quran, and he's talking to me through the Quran. You know, he talks to me, you know, when I'm doing my prayer. You know, sometimes, you know, prayer is, I find prayer an amazing experience. You know, because every so often I'll have a prayer and I feel like I've gone to a different place, and I will be lost within my prayer, and I don't know where, you know, it is, and I feel that communication with God. I feel like I say my prayer and I'm at the edge of an abyss, and before me is this immense nothing, you know, immense, you know, I don't know, immense feeling of God in front of me. It's so huge, and I feel like I'm talking to Him personally during my prayer, you know, and it's a very weird thing to say, and it's, you know, I try, you know, I'm sure other people have experiences like that. It's you know, it's nothing that you talk about every day. I talk to my wife about it, but yeah. So in my journey through my last 2 years has been, you know, it's given me a sense of who I am. It's given me a purpose in life. It's given me sometimes to say, having the courage to choose the harder path in life. You know, to take the harder path, which is the path to God, not the easy path, which is the way, you know, which is the wrong way to take. And it's given me an opportunity to live my life in a righteous way, in a goodly way. I think it's impacted on my children, because I think my children see me, in the last 3 years, you know, they've seen a different father. I'm still the same father, I still love them just as much. But now they see me, you know, having, you know, virtues and strengths that I carry on every single day in my life. So Islam has completely changed my life, and it's been just dramatically for the better. And it's still hard. God still gives me very hard questions about myself, and because I won't be able to grow unless He doesn't push me. But every day He pushes me. He knows exactly when I need to be pushed, and He knows exactly when He needs to carry me. And and I feel like I have a beautiful relationship with Him. Again, I'm able to. When I was in Iraq a couple of weeks ago, I went to the Imam Ali mosque, and I was struggling with a certain aspect of my faith. And I spent the whole week in Iraq struggling with this aspect of my faith. On my very last day, I got my answers to my faith, that question, and it was just like this revelation to me. And this is what Islam gives me. It gives me this, you know, it gives me people who I can look up to, like Imam Ali. It gives me the way the Prophet lives his life, but it also gives me a communication with God, and I'm extremely thankful for it.